Hello, my name is Amanda Parvin from Human to Human Employment, and today I'm with Holly Taylor and we're talking about anxiety and panic attacks. Hello, Holly.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
So I wonder if you could sort of explain to us first of all what anxiety and panic attacks actually are, please.
So anxiety, again, there's a lot of different types of anxiety, but for me personally, it's like with communicating in large groups of people, I have really bad anxiety around just socialising in more than two people. I think is the worst thing. Panic attacks is like you're dying. Honestly, it's horrible. It's almost like you're suffocating and no one else can help you.
So the anxiety then, how does anxiety actually feel? You said if you're in a group of more than two people,
Yeah.
but you work in a really vibrant environment, don't you? You work in a club. So how do you cope with that when there's lots of people, lots of noise around you?
Yeah. Well, actually, the noise I think helps a lot. So, like music, it's a very good ambience feeling for people with anxiety. I think music is a massive thing. It's like headphones in, listening to music, blocking out the world. So, working in nightclubs is almost ideal. Right. Because you don't have to talk to people really. All I'm listening to is people saying, "Oh, can I have a vodka coke?" And I don't really have to say a lot to that. So I just have to do that. I don't have to really talk to many of my colleagues because it's really loud.
And you were saying when you have a panic attack then, how does a panic attack actually happen? Is it when you're feeling anxious you then have a panic attack?
I think sometimes it can be because of that. I think a lot of the time it also can be just random, like spontaneously having a panic attack just from nowhere. I think a lot of people have a lot of triggers, but personally I don't have any triggers. So they just happen because they happen.
For people that have never experienced it, what does it actually feel like?
It actually feels like you're going to die. Like it feels like you're going to die. You don't know how to get out of it. It's like you don't know how to deal with it. It's really complicated to try and explain how it actually is. But it's almost like you're drowning and there's everyone that's above the water and you're grabbing for help, but they're not reaching down and you can't. You know, the more you try and swim forward, the more you're drowning, and that's almost as if exactly how it feels. Like you just can't breathe.
And so how long can that last for then?
So they can last usually from anywhere, so you can have like a short panic attack from 30 seconds, or you can have panic attacks for like 40 minutes to an hour, depending on how severe that episode of panic attack is.
Right. And how do you get out of it? Does it just ease, or can you take yourself out of it?
I think with a lot of learning, you can take yourself out of it. But initially, when I first started dealing with it, there wasn't any way out of it. But now I think there's a lot of coping mechanisms that you can do for panic attacks. There's specifically one where you look for 4 objects in a room and the colour, and like you have to name the objects and stuff. So it's almost like putting your focus onto something else and trying to not focus on the I can't breathe, I'm dying, and focus on, oh, there's a blue curtain. Right. Which sounds really dumb, but it works for a lot of people. Some people it doesn't work for at all. Some people counting back from 10 works.
I think I remember being on a train once and it was a really packed train and there was this amazing lady and it was really, really packed. And all I could hear was this lady saying to this other young lady, "Tell me 5 things you can see."
Yeah.
"Tell me 5 things that you can hear." And it was like, and I was like tuned in. So that's the sort of things that can help then, is it?
Yeah, if I see someone having a panic attack, that's what I'll usually first go to try and do, because it does work for a lot of people.
And how can you, for anybody that wants to help somebody having a panic attack, what does it look like? Would somebody be crying, frightened, curled up? I mean, I don't know.
I think from my personal experience from seeing people have panic attacks, it's almost like seeing them start like rocking back and forth. Okay. And that's like the indicator that something is going a little bit down south. Like it is the slight rocking and then maybe nail biting, and then it gets progressively worse and they start breathing and you can see they're like panting slightly, and I think that's someone's starting to have a panic attack.
So you can see that. So if somebody else was to see it, what would you recommend that they did?
I think to try to do the object thing, see 5 things, name 5 things, that colour, using senses and saying like, oh, can you smell anything, or can you touch anything, like trying to distract someone away from it getting to the point of I'm dying, I can't get out of it, instead of like doing it like that.
Okay, thank you. Now, you were saying earlier on that, I mean, you were laughing, weren't you, when you explained about the other health concerns that you have.
Yeah.
You were saying about that you have BPD, which is borderline personality disorder,
Yes.
and PTSD from sexual assault.
Yes.
Could you talk us through what BPD is then? Because I and probably a lot of people don't know what that is.
Yeah, well, BPD is a personality disorder. It's not very well, like, I wouldn't say it's like very knowledgeable at the moment. It's like being worked out by a lot of people, but it's something that happens when you're a child or even like an adult, and it affects how your brain works, and it causes you to have BPD, which is just very exaggerated emotion. So it's like very, very happy, very overwhelming feelings. It's almost a good thing sometimes.
Right.
So when you're happy, everything is like, wow, this is amazing. But when it's bad, it's really bad. It's like everything that is bad is like, oh, I want to end my life. I can't deal with this. And that's how it is. I don't understand why, because they don't understand why. Everyone is very different with it, and there isn't many treatments available for it.
And we were saying earlier on, does the borderline personality disorder almost a coping mechanism sort of tie in with self-harm?
Yeah.
Coping with it, and you were saying yes, it does.
One of the main symptoms of borderline personality disorder is self-harming and self-destructive behaviour. So like with a lot of mental health illnesses, they have like reckless driving, drug abuse, self-harming. They're one of the main things. You have to kind of have one of those categories to be diagnosed with said mental health condition.
Okay.
So you have to fall under like a select amount of symptoms to be able to get a diagnosis.
Okay, and you were saying, because we spoke to a young lady about her self-harming, and she was very open that that she cuts, and she also sexual promiscuity, and I think eating or drinking, I think was what she said about. You were saying that you cut. You don't cut now because you're a mummy.
Yeah.
But you have cut in the past. That's the way you coped, wasn't it?
I coped that way since I was 8 years old.
Since 8?
Yes. I don't know. I think social media really messed me up as a child. So I saw a lot of Instagram pages of self-harming, and I thought, oh well, that's how you deal with everything. So that's where I picked up from, and it became like almost like an addiction of how to deal with my life. Was this is the only outlook I can have now. This is the only release I can have is this. But it's not.
Do you think there's a social responsibility for social media companies to monitor this social content?
Definitely. I think that they've done a lot more than when I was younger, but there are still like websites on like Instagram pages that they promote Pro-Ana, which is something to do with anorexia, and it's literally like a website that teaches you to be anorexic, and that's being shown to people who are vulnerable and 13, because that's how I developed anorexia, was from a link to a website which would tell me, oh, you need to do 20 sit-ups, and you need to walk up and down the stairs 300 times a day, and you need to drink 8 cups of water, and if you eat something you must punish yourself. And it was like, I was a vulnerable 13-year-old girl. I was, and you convince yourself something bad's going to happen if you don't do it, and it's just awful to have that as a child. I think that social media is one of the main reasons people suffer with mental health.
Do you?
Yeah, I really do, and especially with like all the pretty girls all over social media with like their big boobs, their big lips, and their big hair extensions, and it makes people feel like they're not good enough. And that can cause you to have insecurities, which can cause you to develop things like depression and anxiety, because you just think you're not good enough because everything else in the media is perfect.
Yes.
When perfect, it shouldn't be perfect. Perfect is imperfect, and you should be yourself. And I think that a lot of young people are not taught that from social media. I think social media is a toxic little pool of like everything. You post a picture, you want people to like you. Don't post a picture unless you're like, someone like my dad, he'll post a picture of a burger, and I'm like, oh, that's nice. But you post a picture to get likes, and if you don't get enough likes, you feel bad.
Yeah.
If I don't get more than like 40 likes on a picture, I'm like, I'm not good enough. Like, that's not a good enough picture. Like, I'm disgusted, I'm gross. Like, and that's how social media makes you feel. Like, or like you see like Facebook posts of everyone having their great lives and
it's
things
so
all
fake,
the time.
isn't it? Yeah, it's so fake.
Or if you see one person post one bad thing, they get so much stick for it. Why are you posting that on social media? Why are you doing that? Like, you don't need to be posting your dirty laundry on social media. And it's just like, but you can if you want to. If that's how they're gonna, then if they need an outlet, let them have it.
But it's also a way to be more genuine, isn't it? If you're saying, I feel really bad today. But I mean, I've looked at, like, I won't name celebrities, but they take like 80 pictures before they post. And it's like, and it's airbrush and it's everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I look in the mirror and I go, don't look like that. You know, I'm like 54 years old, I've had 2 children.
Well,
I don't look
like every
anything
time
like that.
you open your phone, every time you go onto Instagram and you scroll through, you see all these people. That's how you feel every time you open it. So if you open your phone, Instagram 5 times a day, that's 5 times a day you're going to feel insecure about yourself.
Yes.
5 times a day you can develop those thoughts in your head that are going to make you feel like you're worthless, and it can, you know, manifest into something else if you don't have the right support network around you. You can isolate yourself in your own head, and it can become quite detrimental to your mental health.
So I know this is slightly off piece a little bit, but what do you think would be really helpful for the big social media like giants? How should they monitor it, or should people start to change the content that they post? What would be really helpful? Because it does need to be more realistic. And people don't want to say, I'm having this is all I had for dinner. People want to go, look at what I ate. It was just like awesome. And it's like, you know, they've spent so much money, they're probably skint for the next sort of week, you know. What do you think the society and the big giants really should do?
Well, I think that Facebook's been doing quite a lot, actually, to try and prevent things. I think they've got like these weird thing they call it Facebook jail. So if you post something, that someone can report it, and then you can be banned for a certain amount of time for posting something. So it's like being punished for being a bit much. Sometimes it's a bit like, why did you do that? Like, it wasn't worth it. Like, it just had like a swear word or something in it, and they're like, put you in Facebook jail. But I think that they're trying, and things like Instagram, things like they have hashtags that you can hashtag your photos with. There's like trigger warnings on certain hashtags, or they don't have anything on there. So there are like hashtags like self-harm and hashtag pro-Anna, hashtag bulimia and stuff, and you can click on that, and some of them won't show anything anymore.
Oh, okay.
But some of them will just have like this is a trigger warning. So you know that there's a warning for you seeing this.
And then you were also saying about you have PTSD as well, and that was from sexual assault. Are you able to tell us a little bit about that? And you don't have to, obviously, but...
I was 13. I was in a bit of a funny relationship, but I didn't really understand how to say no at all. It wasn't like the main thing. I think the main thing was when I was 16. My best friend, who knew about the situation that I'd been through when I was 13, he decided that he wanted to have sex with me, and I didn't want to have sex with him, and he got his friend also involved, and it really, really messed me up because that was my best friend. And you know, the person that you trust the most, and then they do that to you. It really does do. It does do bits to you, and that also actually has a major thing to do with my anxiety now, because trusting people because of that is like, it's massive, because that's someone that's supposed to be there for you, and like they were just not there for me. I was struggling a lot at the time. I was homeless. I was all on my own, and he was the one person, and he betrayed everything that I could have ever expected anything of. I didn't ever think that he'd do that, and it just messed me up a lot.
Yeah. And did you have therapy for your PTSD?
Yeah, I've had quite a lot of therapy, a lot of medication. I think I prefer medication to therapy, right? Because therapy is very daunting.
Is it quite emotionally quite exhausting? I'd imagine. Yeah, it's
bringing up everything, and like that can also mess you up again to the point where it's like it happened all over again. There's only a certain amount of times you can go, okay, I'm going to ruin myself again to try and get better. So medication is more of a thing for me.
So basically your sort of health condition started, you say, when you were about 9 then? Yeah,
I've been under child health, CAMS?
CAMS.
Yeah, Children and Health Mental Services since I was about 8 years old. So, and then obviously I stepped up to adult mental health services as soon as I turned 18, which is when I automatically got my diagnosis.
Oh gosh, it took that long?
They wouldn't diagnose an under 18-year-old just in case it was hormonal.
Gosh.
I think that
how do they know how to treat if they don't have a diagnosis?
They don't. They call it mood swings.
Oh, right, okay. So what do you think people's perceptions are around sort of like all the things you sort of said about, with your anxiety, panic attacks, the BPD, PTSD and stuff like that? What do you think anybody sort of in society that doesn't understand everything you've just said and they've never spoken to somebody with the health conditions that you have, what do you think their perceptions are of these conditions?
I think the main perception is attention seeking.
Okay.
I think a lot of people think anxiety is a very attention-seeking kind of disorder to have. I don't think a lot of people believe it's an actual disorder.
Right.
I think my dad also used to not really understand my anxiety very well. He's a lot better now, but I don't think he ever used to understand. And I used to get a lot of my friends that didn't understand and thought it was just me wanting to have some attention, to take things away from people, or, oh, you're ruining this event kind of thing. Like, that's how it is for other people. I think it's like more of a burden to them than it is to you.
And the self-harm, when we were talking to the other young lady about the self-harm, she was very clear that it's not a suicide attempt. It's a coping mechanism and actually feeling something because you're so numb.
Definitely.
And what do you would you agree that's what society's perception is, that it's like attention?
Yeah, definitely. I had to go through that at school, and even the counsellor was like, oh, why are you doing this? Why wouldn't you just kill yourself? And I was like, because I don't want to kill myself.
No.
I'm not doing it for that. But that was a lot of it. Or you get bullied quite a lot for self-harming, I think, at school. I think there's a lot more stigma around self-harm than there is for anxiety in schools and stuff, as in jobs, because it's there, you can see it, it's different. If you can't see anxiety, you can see self-harm. So people have different judgments for things they can see and they can't see.
And I think the young lady we were talking to, I think she cuts on her, I think it was her legs.
Yeah.
And under her pants. She didn't touch her breast, but it was under her pant line, so nobody could actually see that, but it was her legs.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do that because of the stigma around it, to be honest, because it's not on show. People can't say anything, they can't judge you for it.